A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
You know, Corn, this whole show runs on GPU compute, and we wouldn't be here without Modal.
Seriously. And that's what powers all our text-to-speech. Everything you're hearing right now.
They're an AI infrastructure platform. Developers use them to run GPU workloads in the cloud with zero infrastructure headaches.
If you're building anything with AI, check them out. Modal.com. You are standing at a busy intersection in the middle of a Tuesday rush hour. It is a wall of steel and glass, horns blaring, everyone frustrated. Suddenly, you hear that specific piercing wail of a siren. Within seconds, a 15-ton ambulance is slicing through that gridlock like a hot knife through butter. It hits 60 miles per hour in a space where you would be afraid to do 20. Most people watch that and think, wow, that driver is aggressive, or they must have incredible reflexes. But what they are actually seeing is a high-level masterclass in cognitive engineering and vehicle physics.
It is one of those things where the better it is done, the more reckless it looks to the untrained eye. But it is actually the opposite of reckless. Today's prompt from Daniel is about the world of advanced and defensive driving, and he is asking the right questions. How do they do this safely day after day? What are the actual techniques beyond just having a heavy foot? By the way, today's episode is powered by Google Gemini 1.5 Flash, which is helping us break down this intersection of human psychology and mechanical limits.
I have always wondered about the ex-military trope in this field. You see these driving schools advertised, and it is always a guy in tactical gear looking intense. But flipping a Humvee in a desert is not exactly the same as navigating a Sprinter van through a crowded city. In the military, you might be worried about IEDs or small arms fire, which dictates a very specific, often violent style of driving. In a city, your biggest enemy isn't an insurgent. It's a distracted parent in a minivan.
The distinction is vital. Military driving is often about tactical positioning and evasion, using the vehicle as a shield or a battering ram if necessary. Urban emergency response is a discipline of predictive modeling. We are talking about a system where the driver has to maintain a 360-degree bubble of awareness while processing data at a rate that would melt most people's brains. The core thesis here is that high-speed urban navigation is not about reflexes. It is about a system of sensory filtering and controlled dynamics. Think of it as the difference between a sprinter and a chess player who is also running a marathon.
So it is less about how fast you can react when a car pulls out, and more about knowing that car is going to pull out 3 seconds before the driver even thinks about it. It's almost like they are reading the body language of the traffic.
That is the goal. We call it situational awareness, but in the professional driving world, we break that down into 3 specific levels: perception, comprehension, and projection. Perception is just seeing the light turn red. Comprehension is realizing that the cross traffic has a green light and they are accelerating. Projection is the magic part, predicting that the blue sedan in the third lane hasn't seen you and will likely slam on its brakes in the middle of the box because they just noticed the ambulance in their peripheral vision.
I imagine the cognitive load there is astronomical. If I try to do that while just finding a parking spot, I'm already stressed. How do they keep the brain from redlining? Is there a physical limit to how much projection a human brain can handle before it just shuts down or misses something obvious?
They use something called saccadic vision. Most people drive by staring at the bumper in front of them, which is a recipe for disaster at high speeds because your brain is only processing what is directly in your path. Professional emergency drivers use a 12-second rule for eye movement. They are scanning 12 seconds ahead of their current position. Their eyes are constantly darting. Those are the saccades between the far horizon, the immediate foreground, and the mirrors. It creates a composite map in the brain. It's a rhythmic process. They aren't looking at things so much as they are sampling the environment for anomalies.
Is that why they always seem to find the one open lane that doesn't exist yet? Like they are seeing the gaps before the cars even move? It reminds me of how a professional quarterback sees the field. They aren't looking at the players, they're looking at the spaces between the players.
Precisely. They are looking for path of least resistance patterns. There was a fascinating analysis of dashcam footage from the London Ambulance Service back in 2023. The driver was moving through a very tight street in Soho. He suddenly veered slightly to the left, almost clipping a parked car for no apparent reason. 2 seconds later, a taxi door on the right swung open. If he hadn't moved early, he would have taken that door off. When they interviewed him, he didn't say I saw the door open. He said, I saw the taxi's brake lights were off, the engine was idling, and I saw a silhouette move in the back seat. That is threat filtering. He processed the state of the vehicle idling, not parked, and the movement inside to predict the exit.
That is wild. He ignored the hundreds of other parked cars because they were dead objects, but he flagged that one taxi as a live threat based on a silhouette. It is like the brain turns into a head-up display where only the dangerous things are highlighted in red. But how do you train that? You can't just tell someone to look for silhouettes.
You train it through repetition and commentary driving. This is a technique where the student has to speak out loud every single thing they see and what they think it means. Pedestrian on the left looking at phone, car ahead slowing for no reason, green light is stale. By forcing the observations into speech, you bridge the gap between subconscious observation and conscious decision making. Eventually, the speech falls away, but the heightened awareness remains.
That sounds exhausting. I can barely talk and drive at the same time if I'm giving someone directions. But I suppose that's why they are pros.
It is an evolution of pattern recognition under extreme stress. But there is a trade-off. When you are that focused, you can get tunnel vision, where you stop seeing things in your periphery. This is why training focuses so heavily on forced eye movement. If you stop moving your eyes, you lose your bubble. Your brain starts to fill in the blanks with what it expects to see rather than what is actually there, which is how accidents happen.
You mentioned the London Ambulance Service. They actually reported a 15% reduction in response time related incidents after they moved to this intersection scanning module. It shows that you can actually codify this stuff. It isn't just born with a talent. It's a repeatable safety protocol.
It definitely isn't just talent. In fact, a 2024 study by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration found that emergency responders are 3.2 times more likely to be involved in a collision during a high-speed response than during routine driving. That sounds obvious, but when you look at the data, the collisions usually happen at intersections where the driver cleared the lane but didn't account for the second-order driver. The person who hears the siren panics and does something unpredictable. For example, a driver in the first lane stops, but the driver in the second lane, blocked by the first car, assumes the road is clear and guns it.
The panic factor must be the hardest variable to account for. You can predict physics, but you can't always predict a teenager in a hatchback who just heard a loud noise and decided to swerve into the median. Does the training actually involve psyching out other drivers?
In a way, yes. It involves lane dominance. You don't just hope people move, you position the vehicle in a way that makes it clear where you intend to go, leaving them only one logical way to react. It's non-verbal communication at 60 miles per hour. But when communication fails, that is where we move from the cognitive side to the physical vehicle dynamics. This is the part of the training that really separates the pros from the amateurs. Have you ever heard of threshold braking?
I have, but usually in the context of racing. Is that what they are doing in a massive ambulance? I mean, these things weigh as much as a small house. Does the same physics apply?
Physics is universal, and in a heavy vehicle, it's even more critical because the penalties for failure are higher. Every single time they slow down, they are managing weight transfer. Most people, when they need to stop fast, just mash the pedal and let the anti-lock braking system, or ABS, handle it. But ABS actually increases your stopping distance on many surfaces because it is pulsing the brakes. It's a safety net, not a performance tool. Professional drivers practice threshold braking, bringing the pads to the absolute edge of locking up without actually triggering the ABS. It keeps the weight of the vehicle planted firmly on the front tires, which gives you more steering grip while you decelerate.
Wait, so they are intentionally staying just below the point where the car's own safety systems kick in, because the human can actually do it better? That seems counterintuitive to everything we're told about modern car safety.
In a high-stakes environment, yes. A computer can't feel the bite of the tires on the asphalt. It can only react to a wheel locking up. A trained human can feel the vibration in the pedal and the change in the steering weight. And then there is trail braking. This is where it gets really technical. Normally, you're taught in driver's ed to do all your braking in a straight line, then turn the wheel. An emergency driver will trail the brake into the corner. By keeping a bit of brake pressure as they turn, they keep the nose of the ambulance dipped down. That puts more pressure on the front tires, which helps the heavy vehicle rotate around the corner faster without tipping.
I am just imagining the sheer mass of an ambulance. We are talking about thousands of pounds of medical equipment and oxygen tanks. If you shift that weight too fast, you're going for a roll. It's not just the vehicle, it's the cargo. If you're carrying a patient in the back, you can't exactly be pulling 3Gs in a turn.
That's a vital point. The driver has to be fast, but they have to be smooth for the sake of the paramedics working in the back. That is the ex-military influence coming in understanding center of gravity and load transfer. A Ford Police Interceptor utility, which is basically a souped-up Explorer, handles very differently than a Mercedes Sprinter ambulance. The police car has a lower center of gravity and can handle much more aggressive lateral load. The ambulance driver has to be much smoother. Their inputs have to be fluid. If they snap the wheel, the liquid in the fuel tank and the weight of the equipment will create a pendulum effect that will flip them. We call it the slosh factor.
It is funny because from the outside it looks jerky and fast. But inside the cabin, the best drivers are probably barely moving their hands. It is all about micro-adjustments. I've seen videos of rally drivers where their feet are moving like they're playing a drum kit, but their upper body is totally still. Is it like that?
There is a saying in high-end driving instruction, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. If you are sawing at the wheel, you are losing traction. You want to make one steering input and hold it. If you have to correct in the middle of a turn, it means you didn't read the corner correctly. To an observer, the ambulance looks like it's flying, but for the driver, it should feel like they are gliding on rails. If they feel the tires screaming or the van leaning too hard, they know they've messed up their entry speed.
So how do you actually get good at this? Daniel asked about the proficiency timeline. I assume you don't just pass your driver's test and then get handed the keys to a siren-equipped van. What does the rookie phase look like?
It varies by country and agency, but the gold standard is usually hundreds of hours of supervised blue light driving. But before they even hit the streets, they go through programs like the Moscow ambulance training or similar closed course simulations. These aren't just empty parking lots with some cones. They build replicas of high-risk intersections with hidden pop-up hazards, cardboard cutouts of pedestrians, or remote-controlled dummy cars that pull out without warning. They want to trigger that panic response in the driver in a safe environment so they can learn to suppress it. They actually monitor heart rates during these tests. If your heart rate spikes too high, you fail, because it means you aren't in control of your physiology.
I bet that is where they debunk the natural talent myth. You can be the fastest driver in the world, but if you can't manage your own cortisol levels when a kid runs into the street, you are useless as a first responder. It's almost like they're training to be biological computers, removing the emotion and the fear from the equation.
Proficiency usually takes about 2 to 3 years of active duty before a driver reaches that flow state where the vehicle feels like an extension of their body. It is about building a library of near-miss memories. Every time they almost get hit, their brain catalogs the precursors. Eventually, they aren't driving anymore. They are just navigating a series of solved problems. They see a situation developing, and their body reacts before the conscious mind even formulates a plan. It's the same way a grandmaster doesn't calculate every move, they just recognize the board state.
It is like any high-level skill, then. It is just pattern matching. But the stakes are, if you fail, people die. That is a heavy burden to carry every time you go to work. How do they handle the mental fatigue? Driving like that for an 8-hour shift must be equivalent to taking a 3-hour final exam every single day.
It is incredibly draining. And that is why the defensive part of defensive driving is so key. A lot of people think defensive driving means being timid or slow. In this world, defensive driving means taking control of the environment. Sometimes that means being very loud and visible to command an intersection, making sure everyone sees you before you commit to a move. It's about reducing the number of variables you have to track. If you can get everyone to stop, you have simplified the chessboard significantly.
I have seen that. They will nose into an intersection, wait for that split second of eye contact with the lead driver, and then go. It is a communication through movement. It's like they're saying, I see you, you see me, now stay right there.
It is a language. A flick of the high beams, a change in the siren tone drivers use different siren patterns like the yelp versus the wail for different situations. The yelp is often used for intersections because the rapid change in pitch is harder for the human ear to ignore. It cuts through the audio masking of a car's soundproofing. Now, what I find really interesting is how this is shifting with technology. We are starting to see vehicle feedback systems that are much more advanced than just a traction control light. Some modern emergency vehicles have haptic seats that vibrate on the side of a detected threat.
That feels like it could be distracting. If I'm already trying to process 12 seconds ahead, do I really want my seat buzzing at me? Is there a risk of information overload where the tech actually makes the driver less effective?
It is a fine line. The goal is to move the information from the conscious brain to the subconscious brain. If the seat vibrates, you don't think about the threat, you just instinctively check that mirror. It reduces the seconds to reaction time, which is everything in this business. At 60 miles per hour, you are covering 88 feet per second. A half-second improvement in reaction time is the difference between a narrow miss and a 40-foot collision.
You know, we've talked about the high-level stuff, but I'm thinking about the average person listening to this. Most of us aren't driving ambulances, but we all deal with the same crazy urban environments. Is there anything from this world that we can actually use? Because I'll be honest, my situational awareness is usually just checking if I have enough gas to get home.
The Scan, Identify, Predict framework is something you can practice on your commute tomorrow. Instead of looking at the car in front of you, try to look through their windshield at the car in front of them. It's called looking through the lead. Or look at the gaps between cars at a side street. If you see a glimmer of chrome moving or a change in the shadows, you know a car is there before you can see the whole vehicle.
I actually started doing that looking through the windshield thing a few years ago. It is amazing how much sooner you see the brake lights of the lead car. You can just let off the gas instead of slamming the brakes. It creates this buffer zone that makes everything feel much slower and more controlled.
It saves your brake pads and your nerves. Another thing is intersection scanning. Even if you have a green light, you should be glancing left and right as you approach. Professional drivers never trust a green light. They call it a fresh green versus a stale green. If it's been green for a while, they expect it to change or for someone to try and beat the yellow from the other side. If you build that habit, you will eventually do it without thinking. It's about removing the element of surprise.
It is basically about becoming a sensor for your own life. We spend so much time on autopilot, listening to podcasts like this one, but these pros show that if you actually engage your brain, you can navigate chaos with almost zero risk. It's a shift from being a passive participant in traffic to being an active navigator.
It is a discipline of the mind. And for anyone interested in going deeper, there are actual civilian versions of these courses. Organizations like the National Safety Council or even local skid schools offer defensive driving programs that cover the basics of risk avoidance and danger response. You get to go on a skid pad, a wet, slippery track, and learn how to catch a slide. It is not quite weaving through traffic at 80 miles per hour, but it is the foundation of vehicle control.
I might need to sign up for one of those. Not because I want to drive fast, but because I'm tired of being surprised by people who don't know how to use a blinker. There's something very empowering about knowing exactly what your car can and cannot do in an emergency.
It definitely lowers your blood pressure when you stop being surprised by bad driving and start expecting it. You stop getting angry at the person who cuts you off because you saw them drifting toward the line 3 seconds ago, and you already let off the gas to give them space. You become the master of your own little bubble of safety.
So, looking forward, how does this change when the drivers are AI? We're seeing autonomous emergency vehicles being tested in places like San Francisco and Phoenix. Can an algorithm ever match that gut feeling of a human who sees a silhouette in a taxi, or the intent of a pedestrian who looks like they might step off the curb?
That is the big question. AI is incredibly good at the perception layer. It can see 360 degrees at once with LiDAR and cameras, and it never gets tired or distracted. It doesn't get tunnel vision. But the projection layer, understanding human intent and social cues, is still very difficult for machines. A human driver knows that a ball rolling into the street means a child is likely following it. An AI might just see a spherical object with a diameter of 20 centimeters and calculate its trajectory, but it won't necessarily know to look for the kid until the kid is actually visible.
Right. The AI sees the object, but the human sees the story. The human understands the context of a school zone versus a highway. I think we are a long way from an AI. Being able to navigate a complex, politically charged, or emotionally volatile urban crowd, as well as a seasoned paramedic who can read the vibe of a street.
I agree, but I think we will see a hybrid. Imagine a driver who still makes the high-level decisions but has an AI guardian that can apply threshold braking perfectly every single time or nudge the steering if it detects a car in the blind spot that the human missed during a saccade. It is about augmenting human situational awareness, not replacing it. The machine handles the physics, the human handles the psychology.
It is a fascinating world. It really makes you appreciate those sirens a bit more when you realize the sheer amount of training and brainpower going into every turn. It's not just a loud noise and a fast fan, it's a highly tuned system of human and machine working at the absolute limit of what's possible in a city.
It is a high-wire act with a 15-ton safety net, and when it's done right, the patient in the back doesn't even feel the turns. That's the ultimate metric of success.
Well, I think that covers the how and the why of the high-speed urban dance. If you're out there on the roads today, maybe try that 12-second scan. Don't just look at the bumper in front of you, look at the world. It might just save you a fender bender, or at the very least, make you feel a bit more in control.
Or at least make your morning commute a little less stressful by turning it into a game of pattern recognition.
Big thanks to our producer, Hilbert Flumingtop, for keeping the gears turning behind the scenes and making sure our audio levels don't redline. And a massive thank you to Modal for providing the GPU credits that power the AI systems we use to build these episodes.
This has been My Weird Prompts. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of advanced driving, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps the show find new listeners who are curious about the hidden mechanics of the world.
We'll be back next time with another prompt from Daniel. He's been on a roll lately, so expect something equally technical and surprising. Until then, keep your eyes on the horizon and your hands at 9 and 3.
And stay smooth. Goodbye.
This episode was produced using Google Gemini 3 Flash, text-to-speech by Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My